The Angolan Civil War, 1975 to 2002, was one of the longest and most complex conflicts of the Cold War era, deeply entangled in global geopolitics. What began as a struggle for independence from Portuguese colonial rule soon evolved into a brutal proxy war between the United States and the Soviet Union, with Cuba, South Africa, and other regional actors playing significant roles. The war was not only a battle for political control of Angola, but also a reflection of the ideological struggle between communism and capitalism, with devastating consequences for the Angolan people. To understand the war's origins, we must first examine the colonial history of Angola and the factions that emerged in the fight for independence. Angola was a Portuguese colony for nearly 500 years, exploited for its natural resources and subjected to harsh colonial rule. Unlike other European powers that began decolonizing after World War II, Portugal, under the Estado Novo dictatorship, fiercely resisted independence movements in its African territories. By the 1960s, three major nationalist groups had emerged. The MPLA Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola, supported by the Soviet Union and Cuba. UNITA National Union for the Total Independence of Angola, backed by the United States, South Africa, and China. And the FELA National Front for the Liberation of Angola, initially receiving aid from the US and Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. These factions, though all fighting against Portuguese rule, had different ideological foundations and ethnic bases, foreshadowing the deep divisions that would shape the coming civil war. Portugal's Carnation Revolution in 1974, which overthrew the dictatorship, accelerated decolonization in Angola. However, the sudden withdrawal of Portuguese forces in 1975 left a power vacuum that the three nationalist groups rushed to fill. A transitional government collapsed as the MPLA, UNITA, and FELA engaged in open warfare. The Cold War superpowers quickly intervened, turning Angola into a major battleground for their ideological struggle. The Soviet Union and Cuba sent military advisors and thousands of troops to support the MPLA, while the United States, fearing the spread of communism in Africa, funneled money and weapons to UNITA through South Africa and Zaire. The FELA, weakened by internal divisions, eventually faded from significance, leaving the MPLA and UNITA as the primary belligerents in the war. The war was characterized by shifting alliances, brutal guerrilla tactics, and extensive foreign involvement. The MPLA, led by Agostinho Neto and later José Eduardo dos Santos, controlled the capital, Luanda, and much of the urban centers, relying heavily on Cuban military support. The Cuban intervention, one of the largest foreign military deployments in Africa, played a crucial role in securing early MPLA victories. Meanwhile, UNITA, under Jonas Savimbi, operated mainly in the rural south and relied on external support from South Africa and covert U.S. funding. The South African Defense Force SADF launched cross-border attacks into Angola, aiming to weaken the MPLA and protect South Africa's regional interests, particularly in Namibia, which was then under South African control. One of the war's turning points came in 1987 to 1988 with the Battle of Quito-Quanaville, the largest battle in African history since World War II. This battle saw Cuban, Soviet, and Angolan forces clashing with UNITA and the South African military. The outcome was inconclusive militarily, but had significant political repercussions. The high costs of intervention, combined with international pressure, led South Africa to withdraw its troops and ultimately contributed to Namibia's independence in 1990. With the Cold War ending and Soviet support waning, the Angolan conflict shifted from an international proxy war to a more localized power struggle. Despite peace efforts, including the 1991 Bices Accords and the 1994 Lusaka Protocol, the war persisted due to mutual distrust and personal ambitions. UNITA, having lost major external support, resorted to diamond smuggling to fund its operations, while the MPLA controlled Angola's lucrative oil resources. In 1999, the government launched a final offensive against UNITA, eventually leading to the assassination of Jonas Savimbi in 2002. His death marked the effective end of the war, and soon after, a peace agreement was signed, bringing nearly 3 decades of conflict to a close. The Angolan Civil War left an enduring legacy. The war devastated Angola's economy, destroyed infrastructure, and caused immense human suffering, with an estimated 500,000 deaths and millions displaced. Even after peace was achieved, the scars of war remained, with Angola struggling to rebuild amid widespread poverty, corruption, and economic inequality. Today, Angola stands as a nation that has moved beyond war, but continues to grapple with its historical divisions and the long-lasting effects of Cold War geopolitics. The Angolan Civil War serves as a reminder of how global rivalries can shape and prolong conflicts, leaving a lasting impact on the nations caught in their wake.